there's a need to balance ourselves so that while we adopt technology for promoting efficiency, accountability, and transparency, there is also a need to preserve and protect the core human values. And therefore, we have chosen the theme, Emerging Technologies and its Impact on Future Society, for our e-Naga Summit 2020. We are also aware that this is a time where all over the world, people are making preparation for celebrating Merry Christmas. And therefore, we have opted for a very short e-Naga Summit 2020. But while doing so, we have not compromised on the quality of resource persons. And I take this wonderful opportunity to welcome all the resource persons and each and every one of you to this e-Naga Summit 2020. With these few words, I request our Honorable Advisor, IT and C, NRE and Science and Technology, Sri Mulumo Kikong, to give his speech.
A warm greetings to all the experts and resource persons from Estonia, Europe, Asia and India, and to all the viewers of the 6th edition of the e-Naga Virtual Summit 2020. I'm happy to inform you that the government of Nagaland, through the Department of Information Technology and Communication, is conducting the 6th edition of the e-Naga Summit 2020 through virtual mode under the theme Emerging Technologies and its Impact on Future Society. This time, in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, we are conducting the summit through virtual mode, and we talk top experts in IT sector from Europe, Asia and India, which is a clear indication that the state of Nagaland is very determined and committed to fulfilling our vision towards making the state of Nagaland the next IT hub of Southeast Asia. And I believe that with all your support, we would be able to make this dream come true. With these few words, I wish the 6th edition of the e-Naga Virtual Summit 2020 a grand success.
The first resource persons we have is Liselotte Lyngsø. She's a founding partner of Future Navigator from Denmark. She is a renowned key speaker, moderator, and consultant for various global organizations. She travels around the world to teach people to predict and prepare for the future, and today we are very lucky to have her as our resource persons. I've listened to her lecture in e-governance conference in Estonia in 2019, and she's just an amazing speaker who keeps talking of a better world lying ahead of us. We'll go to our first speaker, Liselotte Lyngsø, founder partner, Future Navigator of Denmark, on the topic, Aftershocks and Opportunity Scenarios for a Post-Pandemic Future.
I thank you for inviting me to Nagaland. I would have loved to be there with you, but as I cannot do that, I think being here virtually is the second best opportunity. I've just finished a book together with futurists around the world looking into how is the pandemic transforming societies as we know it. And there are huge differences as to where we are on the planet. Nevertheless, I think teaching you to use the futurist muscle is something that I can do, even though that I am normally based in Copenhagen. So first I will just teach you the principles of spotting the future, then a little bit about when will the future arrive, and then what big transformations are happening and at what scale. So a very ambitious program, so hold tight and hope that you can follow the arguments. So first of all, the first principle when you want to be a futurist, and the reason you want to do that is that you can no longer look to the past and say, oh, I want to do the same thing as my mother did or my father did. Society is changing, the labor market is changing very rapidly due to digitalization, new technologies, new way of prioritizing in life. But what you can do is that you can use your futurist muscle to say, interesting, exciting. Please repeat after me. Interesting, exciting. Try to put your arms into it. Interesting, exciting. Then you will start believing it yourself, even though what you see looks very strange. So interesting, exciting. So I hope right now everybody is saying interesting, exciting, no matter where on the planet that they are based, because then you have already passed the first futurist test. So let me give you an example. I heard about deep fake coming about. So videos can record your face and it can be misused. So my face can say something that I have never said. And of course that could ruin my brand and my reputation. So that's a danger to democracy. But as a futurist, you have to be curious and open, not political in any way, just really curious. So first of all, you say, okay, deep fake, where can I download that app? So I downloaded the app immediately, this Chinese app, and I started playing around with it. And then I realized, hey, maybe it's interesting for me because I do a lot of work at home at the moment. The pandemic is very bad in Denmark, so everything is closed down. So I have a lot of meetings online. And what I can do is that I can film my face in the afternoon when I had nice makeup, nice hair, and I'm looking good. And then when I have these morning meetings, typically with Australia, then I can put on this fake video of me speaking, and it looks like, you know, that I've been up for 5 hours. So interesting, exciting.
I could be a man applying for jobs.
Yes, I could change my gender, or I could even go for meetings like a robot.
Or I could come as this robot, Sophia, who already has a citizenship in Saudi Arabia.
So the point is, before making decisions about your education or your labor or your line of work or your new business opportunity, try to stay within this area of curiosity just a tiny bit longer, trying to explore, trying to experiment, not saying whether it's good or bad, just interesting, exciting. And I do that all the time. Instead of just reading about it in the magazines, try to find out, could I test this myself? So if you remember that, not saying whether it's good or bad, just being curious, you should stay in that field just a little bit longer than you usually do. So if I have to talk a little bit about, so when will cities and people be smart? When is the future arriving very fast and when is it arriving very slow? There are huge differences here because the media, they will talk about the future arriving at the same speed. When you listen to them, you think you will colonize Mars almost next month. And it's really hard to assess so what is actually arriving and what is coming very slow. So the way I look at it is that the slow stuff, the red light, is if it's really difficult to implement, if it's truly a new way of acting and working. So for a lot of educational systems, they haven't been able to work online at the universities for a long time because it was too difficult. The teachers didn't know how. And now during the pandemic, we have this global experiment of everybody being able to work on a distance, and suddenly you can enter the best training and schools all over the planet. But while it's still difficult and hard and not very transparent, the future will arrive very slow. Hardware, so in the physical world as well, very slow future. So for instance, we are talking about creating these Hyperloops, so that is tubes connecting cities. So you could go to Delhi in 14 minutes by digging this hole in the ground, and then you have the tube and you will be sucked through, and probably all your wrinkles will be removed at the same time. Well, that will come fairly slow. You need a lot of money, a lot of economists saying we should do this for a long time. The politicians should back it. And then you have real engineers out there digging the holes, fitting it all together. So physical world, slow future generally. Then of course there's always a price issue. So how costly is it to change from one technology to another? At the moment, we are talking a lot about changing from fossil fuel and petrol cars to electric cars and electric vehicles. And actually, if people only drive very little, maybe less than an hour a day, which is the global average, well, the business model is not so good moving from petrol to electric. So you need a different business model for the price to go down seriously. So for instance, once we have driverless cars and they are driving all the time, 24 hours 7, you have a much better business model saying, well, now it's really a good idea having electric cars. You know, they can generate energy when they are parked, and they can then drive around almost 24 hours 7. So price model is important. Then we look very much at regulation. How regulated is the area that we are looking at? If there are many legislations, for instance, we have wanted to have flying drones deliver our goods for a long time. It's not possible. People are always very scared, you know, what can happen if you have a drone in your head. And in general, people are double scared of what they can lose rather than what they can get. So if there are any dangers involved, or it's highly regulated like the finance market traditionally, the future will arrive fairly slow. So the fast future, how do you see what is actually coming almost tomorrow or the next day? How do you predict that? That's when you look at laziness. If it makes it easier for people. So you remember the old days where you had to put in your credit cards, you had to press your code. Now you can just tap the credit card on top of the machine and the payment is done. Or you smile to the camera and the payment is done. You know, if it makes it easier for people, we are willing to trade in our privacy. We are willing to trade in anything just because it makes it much easier to be human. So look at the things that are seamless in implementing. Those are always being adapted much faster. Then, of course, software. We have this saying at the moment that the world is being eaten by software. And these are the intangibles moving into the clouds, all the services that we have. So if you look at hardware as robots going around serving your coffee, more likely you will have all these sensors, you will have smart cities saying, well, Lisa, you shouldn't have that coffee. We can see you haven't had enough sleep at night. Maybe you should have a nap instead. So you will have these smart holograms. They might even look like a robot. You might even think that you're touching it, but it's only existing in virtual reality. That is coming extremely fast. The smart data, the artificial intelligence, giving us all kinds of epiphanies that we didn't know about. Or for instance, there is no need to have heat everywhere in the house. I'm in freezing cold Denmark. I will have sensors saying, okay, Lisa is right here, so we can turn off the heat everywhere else. Or likewise, with having air condition, there's no need to put that on everywhere. It should follow the person, so we all have our own indoor climate. So that is some of the things that are coming now. And then of course the cities will be very fast, very smart. You have a lot of congested areas in Nagaland, and the actual ability for traffic to communicate and machines to communicate with machines will create much more smooth operator. So everything that is happening with these sensors and with the interconnectivity and artificial intelligence, that is coming at an almost exponential level, while in the physical world that is happening much more slow. Ideas are another thing, so we always look at who is getting the best ideas. I think it's so fantastic that you work together with Estonia, that you're having these ideas traveling across different areas in the world. During lockdown, during the pandemic, so many people have shared ideas, for instance, how to solve the question of a new vaccine across country lines. And what we look at as futurists, we always see, okay, they have a lot of ideas exchanged, so the future will arrive fast. So we look a little bit at, are people playing Monopoly? I don't know if you know that game, but you build hotels and you go around with your car, and if you land at a hotel, you pay a lot of money. I think it's only 30% who's ever gaining a game of Monopoly. Most people, they get angry before they flip the board in rage. Anyway, that was the old logic and lifestyle of companies and countries. So if we build the biggest hotel, the other ones will die. The other mindset is much more like the gamer's mindset. And I think that's really interesting for Nagaland, because you don't have that many primer production. You have your ideas, you have your people, you have your education. And what will happen if you start sharing ideas with the whole world? How can you create this melting pot of innovation, opening up, discussing things? So if you are a gamer, you give one idea to the other person give another idea. The more people get into the game, the bigger and more interesting the game gets. So we should get the flow of people up. Finally, muscle power is important. So who has the big muscle power of actually implementing the ideas? And there are huge differences for whether you're looking at the big tech companies in China and the Silicon Valley, or you see these small startup businesses. So we always look at who has the big muscle power in order to get these projects going. I saw these three engineers. They had created this fantastic idea. Instead of having fridges cooling down Coca-Cola, you can go anywhere and you can have a cold Coca-Cola. They created a reverse fridge. So it will freeze down your soda pop within 3 seconds, and it will be 5 degrees and ready to drink, and you can turn off all the refrigerators. Well, after 2 months, the largest refrigerator producer in the world bought their patent, and I haven't seen it on the market since. So muscles are a good idea to look at for whether the future is arriving fast. So let me just show you some of the slow futures. So for instance, this Hyperloop that I spoke about, but also these flying drones that will carry us around.
One of those is air.
We're living in cities where people live in 3 dimensions in skyscrapers, they work in 3 dimensions in skyscrapers, and you have a transportation grid that's in 2 dimensions. That transportation grid will not be able to keep up with 3-dimensional life, and that's what Elevate is about.
And that's great. And I spoke to New Zealand about making flying driverless cars also, so you wouldn't have to think so much about the infrastructure. But again, it's in the physical world. These machines will break down much easier than something that you have created in your virtual space. So we might travel to each other as holograms much faster than we are actually having our own personal helicopter transporting us around, hopefully using solar energy. Another big change that is coming fairly slow, I guess, is the ability that we can taste things via our screens. But it is still happening a little faster, but it needs a specific screen, so we all need to get at least a new phone or a new computer for this to happen. So you can taste anything. You go to the restaurant and you taste the menu card and you know exactly what dish you're gonna get. So do I like the butter chicken? Then you taste, or maybe even for dating, it could be very interesting. Yeah, I'm not going into that. Then another technology that I think is really important for you to notice is that we've been spending so much time on Google optimization and search words, and these 10 fingers, they are so slow, right? So again, laziness, we are changing now from, instead of using our fingers to search, we will use our voice. By 2023, we expect that 90% of all searches will be voice searches.
Playing jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember, dentist at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
And we're gonna do one more.
Oh yeah. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open. Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey! Open door!
Play on the floor.
Get on the floor! Open the door!
Wrong voice command.
On one hand, some people are scared that Amazon is taking over the whole world, because if you ask for batteries, Amazon is going to send you batteries from them rather than Duracell or some of the other big brands. On the other hand, it can work as a huge force of democratization for all the people who are not able to write, or maybe they speak a different language. You will have immediate translation, and you can just interact with this chatbot who will be able to navigate for you, who will be able to find you anything you need. So suddenly the internet is opening up for groups of people who have never had the ability to access before. Then we're moving into something interesting. I hope there are some students out there, because it's going to be really, really easy to cheat, because you can just think about a question and then you will have it in your head, at least according to Elon Musk and his new version of Neuralink. Behind him are some very clever pigs who now have it implanted in their brain. So the big question is not, are you scared from getting the vaccine against the COVID-19, but would you actually have an implant? What you get here is that you get the internet embedded in your head, so you can ask anything and it will be able to tell you immediately. That means that we have all the answers that we need. So what is going to be difficult is actually posing the good questions. The stuff that we didn't know we couldn't live without. So all the thing about ethics, asking the questions, where do we really want to go, is going to be a very big thing here. What he is also doing, so imagine you have the voice recognition. In the future, it's going to be thought recognition. So basically, it can read your brain waves to a degree. So if you think about something, it will come out as a text message. So interesting, exciting in terms of privacy, in terms of how will your marriage be if your wife can read your mind. A lot of things are happening there, and Elon Musk is also talking about memory transplant. So you have a new employee in your business, you can have the memory implanted. And they have already worked with that on mice. So it took them 3 weeks for a mouse to get into the cheese in the middle of a maze. Took it a long time. Then you took the chip out of the brain of the mouse, put it into a fresh mouse, and how fast do you think it went into the cheese? First time. No hesitation, it had seen the maze before. So the ability actually to move a part of the memory. I'm not saying that this is happening in the short future, but it does have some very interesting implications. In the first run, it's for people who have dementia, but also people who have paralysis. So if you have your back broken, you can actually send messages down to your limbs and get them to move again. Quite amazing. Let's hear what Elon Musk has to say.
But yeah, essentially, if you have a whole brain interface, everything that's encoded in memory, you could upload. You could basically store your memories as a backup and restore the memories. And ultimately, you could potentially download them into a new body or into a robot body. The future is going to be weird.
That's his way of saying interesting, exciting. The future's going to be weird. So finally, what are all these new technologies about? It's not about looking at the technology. The distance from envisioning something to actually being able to do it has never been shorter than it is today. So imagine you are living in a society where anything that you think about, that you dream about, could actually possibly be created. So what you have to think about is, what do we want? What sort of ethics do we want? What sort of framework? I think one of the most interesting challenges that are happening now due to AI is that we are having all these measurements. So for instance, in New Zealand, they have started to measure on the well-being budget. So they measure how do people feel. So let's look at smart mobility as mobility being people who are able to find and put together an exciting education, who are able to create interesting businesses in Nagaland, who feel that they have a room, a space of development, that they have the tools, the technological tools to engage in society, and they feel empowered to do so. So in New Zealand, where they have created this well-being budget, they say, why do we measure on economic growth? What is really important is the growth of people. So we can see that if people have a nice mental well-being, if psychologically they feel secure, they feel that they have a network of people caring about them, well, then they get a nice husband or wife, they get clever kids, they do well in school, they find good jobs. So the best investment we can do is in investing in the psychological well-being of our citizens. So rather than looking at it as an expense, which they used to do in the old days, they can see from artificial intelligence and actually pattern recognition, so you can almost rewind, you can fast forward a person's life and saying, well, if Lisa keeps living like this, probably she will get these troubles in the future. By looking at face recognition, at mood patterns, thought patterns, movement patterns, you get insights that can actually give you good ideas. You have this global brain of experience that you can tap into, and then you don't have to be stupid yourself. You can actually be extremely smart, making some choices that is empowering you into the world, making you a good long-term investment. So let me give you a concrete example, because I know this can sound a little abstract, but biking, for instance, we have, by making this well-being budget, we have measured from the Danish government that if people take a bike rather than a car, they gain the government $1.5 per kilometer they're on their bike. My son asked me, oh, so mom, can you pay me half? I told him no. But the understanding of how things are interconnected and how many small smart moves we can do in terms of mobility to get the best combination, to not press people like they were lemons, but getting the best out of people and the planet. I think that is really the exciting questions around this mobility. How do we make mobility a much broader, wider issue, where it's about moving society and people and the planet in a much more healthy, beneficial direction? And there I think number one is this with the ideas that every citizen should feel involved and engaged with new technologies, with new ways of creating values, rather than being told, the robots are coming, we don't need you, and they can do everything. No, the robots will be very good at being robots, but we as people will be very good at being people, and we have to train that a lot. And that is exploring, that is our laziness, when don't we want to do something anymore because it's stupid, then we invent something else. It's frustration. Every time you experience frustration, you say, that's great. Again, a little piece of the future that needs to be invented to solve that frustration. So creating that futuristic mindset and empowering people, understanding that we are all a part of creating this future together. I think that's so crucial, because we will be in front of a lot of big ethical questions. The technology is just a tool. It's neither good or evil. We are the one deciding what it should be. And I wish you all the luck of that. And if you look at some of the transformation in terms of technology that I've talked about today, discuss with your friend or your neighbor or your business partner, what do you think will arrive fast? What will arrive slow? You can even vote, put some timelines on it, and then remember to say interesting, exciting. Then I promise you, you will have a very exciting future lying ahead of you. Thank you.
memory thế cha bê tê bê rừng kê lúa chơ sẽ ye bê lu kí chơ kê chu chơ kê đua đô nô khi kê shơ u nu liê kri so đi đua kê shơ kê vi bê tê ya chơ shơ mu thế mie bu thế cha bô lê bê su đi lu liô Nagaland thế cha kê phơ rơ na thế nu zi vi thương rơ dô chơ đi khe mu zơ rơ mê sa e ru thế mie nhô bu hu u thế cô chơ ye ki chơ thu tô xiên ye ki kê thu kê lê ngu đi chơ mu ri kê shơ u thế ye hun ho syo hang u đi tuôn tê pra tuô đi mu lo lu bu vi hen mu zi vi rơ tuô hu liô Nagaland kê mi kê chu rơ na thế va ki krơ thế mơ ngu shơ rô thế mie bu sơ gom hi zie ba nơ se ye bu nu ne nu lu si ba nơ kê syo va wa di kê vi ko pie u rơ dô chơ kê pe nhô phơ za kê so ba li rô u xie dê lê pie u zơ zie kro i zo di son ye kê li di u cha nu vo lie tuô kê vi u ya
Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Come to Bethlehem and see Him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the newborn King. Gloria, Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Gloria, in excelsis Deo. O come, O ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. triumphant. O come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord.